We've just got some breaking news in from Buckingham Palace, folks. So this statement has just come in from Buckingham Palace, and I'll read it for you. It goes on to say, His Majesty has today initiated a formal process to remove the style, titles and...
King Charles does not raise his voice, and that is exactly what makes this moment so chilling. There are no cameras, no dramatic announcement, no public confrontation, just a pen, a waiting order, and a decision that, according to this dramatized account, changes Harry and Meghan's royal identity forever. Within minutes, the instruction begins moving through palace channels, and the Sussex title is suddenly no longer being treated as something permanent. For Harry, the wound is not simply the loss of a royal designation. It is the fact that the decision comes from his own father. For Meghan, the shock is even more personal. An identity she helped define in the public eye is being erased by the very institution she once stood inside. And while the world has not yet heard the full story, inside Buckingham Palace, something irreversible is already happening. Charles remains behind closed doors, reading the order while senior aides wait nearby. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex designation, once connected to marriage, monarchy, ceremony, and public identity, now sits at the center of a decision carrying consequences far beyond paperwork. The king signs beneath the order and instructs officials to begin implementation. But here is where the story becomes deeply uncomfortable. The paperwork may look administrative, yet the emotional meaning is anything but. A father has used the authority of the crown against his own son. Charles pauses with the pen still near the page, as if even he understands that one signature can change official records in seconds but cannot erase years of family history. No celebration follows. Instead, Charles asks when Harry and Meghan will be informed. The answer is brutal in its simplicity. Before the public, but only barely. Across California, Harry receives the message and reads it once. Then again, he says nothing. Meghan watches his expression change as the reality sinks in. This did not come from some distant committee or anonymous palace office. It came from his father. She reaches for the phone, but Harry keeps hold of it, staring at the sentence, confirming that the decision is permanent. Then comes the second blow. The order does not merely remove the designation in the present. It directs palace records, ceremonial references, and future official communications to use revised wording, making it far harder for the old identity to quietly return. Meghan asks who pushed Charles this far, but the answer has not reached them yet. And suddenly, the signature itself is no longer the biggest mystery. The real question is who stood behind the king when he decided to make the change permanent, because behind the title are years of anger, disappointment, memory, and unfinished family conflict. Charles remembers the son who once walked beside him through royal corridors. Harry remembers a father he believes stopped understanding him long ago. Meghan sees something else, a public identity she fought to define being erased by an institution she left behind. Politically, the decision may be presented as a matter of royal authority. Privately, it lands like a family explosion. Harry reads the palace notice again, places the phone face down, and tells Meghan that the words themselves are not what hurt most. The real wound is knowing that his father chose the moment, approved the wording, and allowed the order to move forward. Meghan responds with controlled anger. If they collapse publicly, she warns, the palace will decide what this moment means for them. Her instinct is not surrender, it is control. But then another detail arrives through communication from their representatives. William had been briefed before the signature. The prince had given Charles a firm assessment that the unresolved Sussex status could not remain suspended forever, particularly if the next reign would inherit the same dispute. Harry's anger shifts immediately. His father may have signed the order, but now his brother appears to be part of the story too. And then comes the detail that makes everything feel even more calculated. Contact with palace officials had reportedly slowed before the signing. Messages that once received quick replies went unanswered. Meetings quietly disappeared. The decision was moving toward completion while Harry still believed there was time to stop it. Meghan looks at him, and the question hangs there: what happened inside the family to push Charles from hesitation into permanent action? Because the order did not truly begin with the pen. It began weeks earlier behind another closed door, during a confrontation that was supposed to prevent exactly this outcome. Harry expected conditions for reconciliation. Charles expected an assurance that royal identity would no longer be used in ways Buckingham Palace considered incompatible with separation from official duty. Neither man got what he wanted. Harry enters the private Windsor meeting already defensive, convinced his father is using royal authority to force personal obedience, while Charles sees the situation through an entirely different lens. To Charles, the Sussex title continues carrying the weight of the monarchy, even though Harry and Meghan no longer serve as working senior royals. That distinction has become the entire battlefield. Every time the title appears, the boundary between private independence and royal authority becomes harder to define. Charles has resisted a permanent rupture from months because he knows stripping the designation will never be interpreted as a simple administrative adjustment. The public will see judgment. Harry will see rejection. And Charles knows that he is still dealing with a son, not merely someone who once represented the crown. But patience has limits. Charles believes the monarchy cannot continue lending royal weight to people who no longer accept the restrictions attached to that identity. Harry challenges him directly, asking whether this is really about duty or whether his father simply wants him to submit. Charles answers carefully, but the tension spikes when Harry asks the question neither man wanted spoken aloud: "Are you treating me as your son at all?" Charles falls silent, and that silence says everything. Then Charles makes the demand that turns an already damaged relationship into an irreversible confrontation. He asks Harry to stop using the Sussex title voluntarily in future commercial and public ventures. Harry refuses. He pushes his chair back and makes it clear that he will not surrender something that was formally given to him. The designation becomes the line neither side is willing to cross. Harry leaves before the conversation can recover. The door closes. Charles remains staring at the empty chair before calling his secretary back into the room. "Bring me the other option." A constitutional file is placed before him containing the prepared measures that could formally enforce the change. William later arrives and immediately understands what has happened. The conversation failed. The disagreement has become rupture, and this time there may be nothing left to negotiate. When Harry returns to face Charles again, there are no advisors between them and no cameras recording the exchange. For several agonizing minutes, father and son speak as two men carrying years of resentment into a room too small to contain it. Then Charles places the unsigned order between them. Harry looks down and instantly understands what it represents. The final possibility of compromise begins disappearing before his eyes. Charles tells Harry that the monarchy cannot preserve royal status forever without the responsibilities and limits attached to it. But Harry hears something completely different. He hears punishment disguised as institutional language. Harry reminds Charles that the Sussex title became part of his marriage long before their departure from royal life became permanent. Removing it now, he argues, does not feel administrative. It feels personal. Then he asks whether Charles really wants his grandchildren to grow up knowing that their grandfather formally removed their parents' place within royal tradition. The words land heavily. Charles pauses, but he does not retreat. He insists that affection and institutional responsibility can no longer be treated as the same thing. He can love his son and still believe the crown requires a boundary. Then Harry discovers that William already knew about the order. The revelation changes the temperature instantly. If William was briefed before the meeting, Harry sees the future monarchy as already accepting his exclusion. Charles admits he delayed signing once before, giving Harry more time after their previous confrontation. But messages between representatives broke down, voluntary compromise failed, and the hesitation ended. Charles tells Harry that the final path had been offered and refused. Harry pushes the order away without reading the final page. Charles pulls it back, closes the folder, and tells him the conversation is finished. Neither man raises his voice. Somehow, that makes it colder. Harry leaves believing the title has been taken. What he does not yet understand is that the palace is preparing something much larger, not merely removing a designation, but systematically preventing the old identity from quietly returning. The machinery now begins moving. Files are reviewed. Language is rewritten. Future ceremonial references are examined. William becomes central because the decision is being designed to survive beyond Charles and into the next reign. Yet Charles carries the burden differently. In a private conversation with Camilla, he admits that Harry may never see the order as a boundary around royal authority. His son may see only abandonment. Camilla listens and warns Charles not to sign anything he cannot emotionally live with afterward. Charles knows exactly what finishing this decision means. If he refuses, he believes he will simply hand the same crisis to William. And he refuses to leave the future king with that unresolved inheritance. William later studies the final wording and removes language he considers unnecessarily harsh, preserving the boundary without turning the decision into deliberate humiliation. The instruction is then prepared for implementation, and that is when the palace strategy becomes truly visible. The first shock does not arrive through a dramatic announcement. It arrives through absence. Meghan opens an official communication and sees her name without the designation that once followed it. No spectacle, no warning, just a missing title.